Hey guys, welcome to my second video of medicine. So the beginnings of change. This is referring to the Renaissance period. So what was the Renaissance? The Renaissance is the rebirth of new ideas. So people started questioning the church. Leonardo da Vinci, he carried out his own dissections and he illustrated them in his artwork, and surgeons obviously looked at this. Andreas Vesalius, he carried out his own dissections and he became like the basis and support for future surgeons, and he showed how to do dissection properly in his two books and some of his others books. He also saw mistakes in Galen's work, how he didn't have enough evidence to prove against him. Ambrose Pare, he ran out of hot oil when because hot oil was used to cauterize the wound, and so it stopped blood from leaving too much and flowing out the body. So he used a egg yolk, turpentine, and rose oil mixture, and it worked more efficiently and it was less painful rather than hot oil. He also used Galen's method of Gcse to obviously seal the ligatures, and he also developed artificial limbs. William Harvey, he performed dissection on cold-blooded animals, and in cold-blooded animals, the blood flowed more slowly, so he could carefully observe it. So he found out that blood flowed twice, so it was double circulatory rather than once. So there was no need for bloodletting. So he challenged that idea, because blood was being replenished and it was being renewed again, so there was no need for bloodletting. He also said proved that the heart was the center of blood transport rather than the liver, like Galen has said. Childbed fever. So Sir Lewis, he noted that the midwives who were dealing with the pregnant women and allowing them to give birth, they had lower death rates than the ones that were dealt by doctors, and this was very strange because the doctors were more experienced. However, he noted that Lewis noticed that the doctors didn't wash their hands, so this is known as childbed fever, and he told them to wash their hands, and there was a infinitely large amount of death decreasing. John Hunter, he wrote two books, the Book of Army, and I think one was Book of Dentistry, and he injected himself with syphilis and gonorrhea by accident in his experiments, so his sacrifice was obviously well known. He also experimented blood flow via using the wax modelling. He also preserved species, fossils, embryos, and other stuff, so obviously that preservation was also a benefit. And he also said that keeping the gunshot wound small was necessary because it was and it wasn't poisonous. It just the wound needed to be kept small. Now, quackery was just a medicine that was invented by the public, so it could be used as preventatives or cures. They normally created opium, alcohol, which had similar, so it allowed you to feel better, but obviously it had no effect. And it depended on the charisma and the charm and the packaging of the medicine that allowed it to be sold, and obviously it wasn't as effective. However, quackery did allow the large market to increase as more people started buying them. Nicholas Culper, you don't really need to know much about him, but he just basically he offered free healthcare to the poor, and he preferred to sit down and talk with the patient rather than drink their wee or smell it, whatever. And Lady Joanna St. John, she grew her own herb garden and wrote a recipe book. Edward Jenner, his vaccination. So Edward Jenner observed that the milkmaids who had cowpox didn't get smallpox, and smallpox was a really, really big killer. Like, it was massive. It killed so many people, and so he observed this, and so he invented a vaccination against smallpox by using cowpox, and the government also became influential by making it obligatory to get vaccinated, and people were obviously concerned about the government's heavy influence as well as the side effects involving a vaccination. Inoculation is just referring to a scratch made between the thumb and the finger. The Great Plague was not the same as the Black Death. The Great Plague occurred later. The similarities between the Black Death and the Great Plague included, for example, both of them didn't have a proper cure or treatment. Both of them had their populations killed, whether in England and Wales, so large amount of deaths, as well as the fact that they both killed cats and dogs. They both had they both believed in similar causes, for example, bad smell, cause disease, God, supernatural, etc. And they also used prayer and religion as a cure. Differences was the fact that the Great Plague had a more scientific approach. They isolated and quarantined people, monitored them. They also had protective clothing used, for example, gloves. And so a more scientific approach, they linked dirt with disease and disease with dirt. And the Great Plague also stopped entertainment. So those are the differences and similarities. Now, medieval hospitals, as I said before, obviously heavily influenced by the church, limited. Whereas in the 18th century, most of them were actually owned by private, so charities rather than the church. The church did emphasize on the importance of charity and care as being good Christians. However, in the 18th century, the hospitals became more specialized, for example, for the poor, for skin, etc. So they were very specialized and larger capacity became available. 18th century, they believed that no disease was less curable than the other, whereas in the medieval hospitals, they believed that care not cure theme, and they used herbs instead. In the 18th century, they had more scientific attitudes, whereas in the medieval hospitals, they had a more religious attitude. However, both in the 18th century and medieval hospitals, they used books and the ancient authority. So this was all of the beginnings of change done.